Okay, today is September 16th, 2000. Today is not 2000.
Okay, all right, we're good there. Let me unmute the WebEx. Hold on. All right, now we're good.
1, 2, 1, 2. My end?
Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is September 16th, 2020. We are going to begin our pre-meeting caucus. I'm going to start off with ordinance number 1. It is sponsored by Councilmember Miola, amending section 2-6-4, fencing requirements. Are you okay with this?
Yeah, I'm just trying to clean up some of the ordinance sections. There was like $10 fee for that little 2 feet that goes on top of the tent. And then it aligns us to one location, so if the future council or the future clerk wants to change the amount of fence fees, because it wasn't changed since 2016, it's easy, one location in our city code that you can change it, so we don't have to bounce around 10 different places to change the amount for the fencing.
And this goes along with ordinance number 2, correct?
Correct, yes.
Anyone have any questions regarding this?
Yeah, so are we changing the fee?
Yes.
We are, okay.
If you vote for it, yes.
Next page.
All right, ordinance number 2. It is sponsored by Councilmember Miola, amending section 2-29-447, fence regulations.
It's just raising the fee, like I said, it was $25 in 2016. I just raised it $10, so for all permits for fencing, no matter what it is, 8 foot, 6 foot, whatever permit that they need, it's gotta be $35.
Any questions regarding this one? All right. Next is ordinance number 3. It's adding 2 feet of lattice white fence to 1,412 Hillside Road. The only question I have is this grandfathered in?
No, he
Okay.
had a 6 foot fence there, and he wanted to make it 8 foot. It was interesting because the neighbors were a little bit abrupt about it because he wasn't a good neighbor, or a genial neighbor, I'll use that. And they didn't want him to do it. So he had about 6 neighbors that didn't want him to do it, but.
Is that the special forces guy?
No. And later on, the ladies changed their mind, and I said it's the right thing to do, you know. I said, we're just doing the existing fence. They were under the impression that he wanted to go 8 foot close to the road. And that's what the legislation very simply says, only adding 2 feet of lattice on the existing 6 foot fence. And everybody was good with it.
The neighbors were good with it?
Yep.
Anyone have any issues with this?
No, it's good.
The next is ordinance number 4, sponsored by Councilmember Friend. No parking at all times. Ordained that section 2-16-360, Schedule E, no parking at all times is amended to include the following: Ballantine, Bray, south side from Genesee Street to the frontage of 20 Ballantine, Bray. Be it further ordained that the proper signage be erected where necessary. Anyone have any questions with this, and are you okay with that?
What's the police thing on this?
They did a traffic study, they think it's a good idea. It's where Valentine Bray takes that sharp turn to the right as you're going towards Genesee, and it also constricts a little bit there. So, and people have been allowed to park on the south side, and a constituent brought up that he really just thinks sooner or later one of those is gonna cause an accident. The police agreed that this was a good idea.
Okay, next is ordinance number 5, sponsored by Councilmember Burmaster. One-way street, ordained that section 2-16-365, Schedule A, one-way street, Warren Street, 1,200 block between York and Lenox, eastbound only. All traffic would enter at York and Warren and exit at Lenox and Warren. Be rescinded. Are you good with this? Does anyone have any issues with this or questions? The next is resolution number 6. It is a proclamation honoring Angela Padone Longo. This is full council. I don't see any problems with this one.
Thank you, council. I'm sorry about the last minute on it, but I wanted to get it accomplished as soon as I could. Thank
That just happened, right?
you. Saturday.
Okay.
Legislation in committee of the whole. I know we had a meeting regarding the convenience store license. I know that Councilmember Friend has something she would like to bring to the table regarding this.
Thank you. I have an idea, which is that this is a very complicated piece of legislation, and I have an idea to simplify it that I think has some important advantages, which is that the administration can still go through whatever application process they find necessary, and then simply apply to the council for approval. So what if the council itself, by a majority vote, could approve or needed to approve the licensure for any convenience store? One of the real advantages I see to that is that we each know our own district pretty well, hopefully, and so we'd be in a good position to go and sort of see, like, does this neighborhood need this? Does it need another one as close to other ones? That's one of the issues we have. So I just want to throw that out there. I know it's a new idea, but where the council would simply vote to approve any request by the administration to grant a convenience store license.
Thank you. Any discussion on this?
I think it's going outside our box a little bit. I don't agree with it.
Check 1, 2, check. Does anyone have a microphone that's working right now?
Oh, are we talking about?
No, I'm just checking them
Check,
anyways.
check.
Test.
All right.
I mean, we're still in the infancy of this whole thing, so
Okay. All right.
I just think that's outside our powers. We're gonna start taking away the administration's area, and the thing is, you know, like you said, the conversation was, you know, get the product together, get it straight, and then come to us, and then we can make amendments to it, whatever, but, you know, we're not gonna write it for the city of Utica. That's not our place, as the judge says. And I don't think we should be getting involved, whether our store goes there or not, because it can turn into politics. Let the administration deal with it, because if it's a lawsuit or something like that, or if we're doing something wrong, or for whatever reason, then it comes back on us as a council. So I think the administration should keep that, and, you know, that way they can, if they have to go to court for anything, then they can handle it. Or we're gonna be sending our judge to court, you know, because we're approving or disapproving stores. So I don't know if that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think Councilman Williamson is right on that, but what I do think we should do is, if it's your district, maybe the city could notify the council person that this is going to take place in your district, and if you want to show up at a meeting at City Hall yourself,
That's different.
and then speak on your behalf. If your constituents aren't happy with it, obviously you could represent them at that time before they get the process,
I
instead
do
of having
think
the
that
whole
that's,
council.
I think that that's in there, I
So-
believe, yeah.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So basically what Councilman DeBrango was saying, don't we normally do that? Like if I get invited to every zoning meeting. So the first thing I do, and please tell me if I'm doing something wrong, I'll go through the deck, and if there's something in my area, I will either call Patty or I will call and check, and if it's something that's important, I get on that call anyway. So don't we normally, isn't that a procedure that we should be following now?
You're describing ZBA? Are you describing ZBA?
No, I'm surprised.
Okay.
Plan, right? I mean, I've been doing that since January. I get it, and, you know, if there's nothing in my area, I don't get on the call. If there's something in my area, I get on the call to see what's going on. And I used to come in person for the first couple months, but after
However,
that,
if I could jump in, the only meeting that is proposed under the convenience store legislation that's in front of you is if there's a revocation of an existing certificate of use. Then there's a meeting.
So,
That's what we discussed the other night, where the council person, the way it's written, would have the responsibility to notify any constituents that they want of the meeting.
And they
That's the meeting that's provided for.
yes, but we decided the other night that we're not doing that.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
okay, thank you.
okay, we have another issue, which is that, so we had that long meeting the other day. There was a pretty strong consensus amongst the the council members who were present about a bunch of stuff we wanted to take out. Ms. Hartnett wanted, I suggested that I had notes if she wanted to get in touch with me. I haven't heard from her. So we don't have a revised copy before us.
No, in talking to Kate, I thought it was understood that you were going to provide the changes, the notes, your notes to her.
I was just waiting to hear from her. Sorry if that was a
Yeah,
misunderstanding.
if you could get them to us tomorrow, we'll have a new draft for you ahead of your next meeting.
Right, okay, yep.
Thank you, Celeste, thank you.
Okay.
So if I'm correct, the thought process, I don't know if my mic is on. The thought process is that the council should be able to agree or approve or not approve a store going into the area as a council. I think there's merit to that, but I don't necessarily buy the argument that it's not the place of the council to do that, because I think, as the judge will often tell us, the majority of 5 can do a lot in this city. So it's in our legal power to do so. But I think it is an option to consider. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I'd like to, I'm gonna go ahead and draft some legislation and to have it before us in 3 weeks. And I'll also reach out to Ms. Hartnett, or I'd rather that she reach out to me. One way or the other, though, we can also clean up the current legislation that we have, so that we have 2 reasonable options before us.
President Galimi has the floor.
Just, when you research that, depending on how you're gonna frame what you're trying to do, I'm not saying that do it or not do it, look up and consider what happened with the, Redeemer Church property at the time it was Mount Zion. Because that is a prime example of the council attempting to step in front of something that was zoned appropriately and trying to stop it. So I'm not sure exactly how you want to frame what you're doing, but I would look that up, see how that played out.
Councilmember Lomedico, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just had a question. Isn't there something in here too, and I'm trying to find it really quickly, is that they have to be what, with no more than within 600 feet of each of them, or?
No,
Who is?
that's the current zoning regulations. is
Right,
that
have
there's
we
a
been
linear
following
footage.
that? It doesn't appear we've been following that.
We are, except they have, under the city zoning, they have applicants that are looking to vary that, have the ability and the legal wherewithal to go in front of the zoning board and get an area variance. And in the past, the zoning board of appeals has approved those area variances.
No, I got this a couple weeks.
And that's why we don't have the same
quick
teeth
print.
that we do with what we're proposing.
I just.
So I think we should have a little more say into
I think I
that,
emailed her after we got it.
you know,
Said, "Can you
exactly
print
where
it?"
they're gonna go. What's the new one say?
The new one allows them in certain zoning districts, but doesn't put a restriction on how close they can be, the proximity to each other. It instead looks at how they're operated and grants a permit based on their operation.
I'm not all that in favor of that. I think that when you have 4 or 5 of them little stores all together, I think that creates a problem. And
Well,
I think
only
it,
if they're
I think it, and I
op-
think it,
only if they're not operating in
and I
accordance with
think
the law.
I think it takes away from the neighborhood as well.
If you've got 4 or 5 next to each other and they're complying with all the laws, it's
Well,
not.
is that good for the city? Is that good for the neighborhood?
If there's 4 stores next to each other?
Yeah.
All the same kind of stores.
Yes. Would you say that that's a good for the neighborhood?
Well, as long as they're,
They're allowed and they're operating by the law.
Well, I don't think it is.
It's
I don't think it is.
Yeah, but there's
And I've seen where that is.
It's a free market economy. That's what our country's based on.
Well, so also you have a council here that has a decision how they want their city set up as well.
There's a proximity supposed to be from one convenience store to the other. Isn't that in legislation somewhere?
Last year.
Not in
we
this
did it.
legislation. That's the way it's currently set up.
But we
Proposing
haven't
it
been
different.
following it, unfortunately.
We are following it. There's just an allowance for a variance.
Yeah.
And the zoning board is granting those
I think that
variances.
should come through us as well.
Well, again, I would go back to President Galimi's point.
Yeah, we can look
You've
at it,
You've got to be concerned about the legality of the council.
I'm tracking what you're
approving
saying,
uses on a
Brian. I
case-by-case
understand what you're
basis.
saying there, but we also have to look out for the neighborhoods as well. I mean, it's a two-sided, I understand it's a two-sided sword here, but there's things that, you know, there's a lot more.
Agreed. And I believe
than
the
just throwing
permit-
up stores all over the place.
And
So,
I believe the
mean,
permit legislation that we have in front of you protects the neighborhood.
In what sense?
It requires that each operation be operated in compliance with the law.
Yeah, but that doesn't help the neighborhood itself out. We're here to protect the neighborhoods as well as just shopkeepers. You know, it's something that we should look at. I don't think that we should have 4 or 5 stores going to a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood, and all of a sudden it turns into, with, 150 people hanging out in front of these places. I think that's some of the problems that we're having on Oneida Square right now, that they have all these little tiny stores all together, and it just creates a problem. And it's a problem for Delvin there, and he's trying to fix that. So all we're doing is exacerbating the problem right now and just throwing gas on the fire. I think this is something we should look at. I'm not saying yours is incorrect, but I think we could look into it a little, put maybe some caveats on there where we can take a look at that and see if it's really fit for that particular neighborhood. Nothing's black and white. You need to look at it. Is it fit? Is it a fit to the neighborhood? Is it going to make the neighborhood better? Is it going to make the neighborhood worse? There's a lot of things you have to look at on that. And I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong. I just think that there should be something in there where the council people at least could take a look at it to see, is it a fit? Should we talk to the people in the neighborhood? This is their neighborhood. Do they want it? That's just my opinion, and something that I think we need to contemplate a little further.
So, Councilmember Lemetico, I think at this point, Councilmember Friend is going to draft something up, she had said, and she's going to get together with Councilor Hartnett and kind of get together all of the notes that we had at the meeting on Monday. She's going to draft something else up. If there's anything else anybody wants to add into it or take out of it, please contact Councilor Hartnett so that she can kind of get to that point, or make your notes so that we can maybe have another meeting and discuss this and
I
kind of
think
work it the way
Councilman
we
Friend
want.
has sort of got our back on that, right? So,
I do. I really, yes, thank you. I really think that the people who know these neighborhoods the best, which I hope is us, should have some kind of final say on what works in these neighborhoods.
thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
May I ask a question to Mr. Thomas? So, is it okay?
Yeah, go for it.
So can you just explain, I'm a little confused on this permit process, okay? It seems to me, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that most of the stuff that you're requesting through the permit process, the store owner already has to do that through the county, through when he's going for, health inspections, all this stuff, they're already doing this. And I know you explained the other night that if we weren't going with all the background checks, the permit price would be lower than what it is. I'm just kind of confused. Why is it necessary to have this? What is the purpose of this? Is it just for revenue? I mean, to me, it seems like we went through this whole deck of legislation, and I understand the purpose of the legislation. But it really seems to me, if you came in there and you said, okay, once or twice a year, the store needs to be inspected. If you went in there and said, obviously we're not going to go in, we're not going to go after somebody who already has a store. But if they were, convicted of a crime or something, then it would be different. And if we put a time limit into these stores, I think that's 90% of the problem. I mean, we have the deputy chief is here, and I'll refer to him in a minute. But I think I don't want to say we're overthinking it, because I think we're all in the right spot. But I just don't understand why we're getting so intense on this. Okay? I mean, I don't understand. I mean, if we close these places down at 10 o'clock, okay, let's look at right now. I know we're in the middle of a pandemic. Walmart, Price Chopper, everything besides convenience stores that sell gas are closed at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And I don't know. I'm sure there's, in some of these areas that we have problems, I'm sure there's stuff that goes on during the days but I would bet the bulk of the problems are at nighttime. So is it really necessary for us to spend all this time to draft all this legislation when if we did 2 or 3 things, we can eliminate the problem? That's just how I'm looking at it, and please, if I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you, or I'm not trying to do anything, but I'm just telling you, I just don't understand it. I really don't. I mean, that legislation that we went through the other night about going through background checks, it's almost like, I mean, people do have rights here. I mean, I just think that I think it was and we all have agreed that it's gonna change, but I mean, to me, it just seemed like it was very, very intense. And I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I just wanted to, get your input on that.
This was not intended as a revenue generator. This was intended to address a problem use that it persists and is prevalent throughout all of our residential neighborhoods. And it's one that neighbors complain about on a consistent basis. We don't have the teeth right now to control this particular use. It can't be done through zoning. That's what we have found out with our consultants, our legal consultants and our planning consultants through this process, is that you can't control them through zoning. What we found was that, and it held up, it has held up in the courts. This is based on an example in Syracuse. Syracuse has virtually the same identical legislation, and that's where this came from. That's what Syracuse uses. And in fact, theirs goes even further. Theirs not only controls convenience stores, they require this process for restaurants as well, and bars too, I believe. So,
I think we.
I have to say though, and I'm familiar with Syracuse because I work out that way, I don't really think they have more problems, I believe, than we do. I mean, they've got a lot of problems in Syracuse. I mean, I go through Geddes Street, some of the streets are all boarded up. So their legislation that they have going through there, I don't really see where that is doing, I mean, thank God, I don't see us being boarded up all over. And again, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but I think the bulk of the problem is close the stores down at 10 o'clock at night and you're not going to have the problem.
I don't know that you can legally
I
tell them.
yeah, I
You
don't.
said that people have rights.
It's
but they also
difficult.
have the right to operate.
It's difficult for the city to control hours of operation for a business.
Okay,
I don't know that you can.
And
But I can't talk to that, I can't speak to that.
okay.
And I'm only saying that because I believe when they came up with the current legislation for the neighborhood convenience stores, including the 2,000 linear feet, I don't believe that they were able to set a time that they had to close. We can revisit that, but I believe that was the case.
Councilmember Williamson, last comment on this, and then we're going to have to move on to the zoning ordinance.
Okay, so, this is for Deputy. So one of these convenience stores is, you guys have a shakedown, or whatever you want to call it, do an investigation. You found out there's someone doing something illegal in there. I know they're innocent until proven guilty, but what usually happens? I mean, has that happened recently?
Yeah, so recently we had a long-term investigation into several convenience stores in the United Square area. We partnered with other outside agencies to include, local, state, and federal entities, and I think it was about a 6-month investigation. They were able to get enough information to get a search warrant. They went in, executed a search warrant, and the stores were back in operation the same day. There were
You found
criminal
illegal
charges.
stuff going on?
Yes.
And so, I mean, that's the thing, and that was discussed the other night as well. If, once you get nailed, it's done, it's closed. I mean.
That's not the case.
So why does that happen? I mean, is that an adjudication problem, or?
Yeah, what we found in the past is, I mean, the process to go through the criminal justice system takes some time. Everyone has a due process, but then if the person is found guilty, or the state may take away their privilege to sell cigarettes or alcohol or lottery, we find that these store owners just transfer the operation over to some other person that's they're
So
associated with.
legally, judge, maybe not. So if they get hit for selling illegal stuff out of the store, they can't be shut down until the adjudication process is over with?
Well, that's always a question, and I think that, today, you're convicted, might be just saying you did something. But then the final decision has to be made whether you did something to affect something else, like a license. Well, you've got to have the hearing, you've got to be found to have violated, and then after the violation, you'll be punished. You don't get punished because it's charged. You shouldn't be.
So
I
this,
find it a little bit Because I don't think you're ready to adopt this yet, because it hasn't been amended then. The man who could, that spent the most 3 hours on the other night. Anyway, this crossover of points sort of bothers me. It's like an ex post facto thing. I buy a place and I've got 12 points because the other guy was a bad owner. And one of the reasons he's probably selling it is he wants to get them off a month or now because of this law. But I get it, and I'm a good guy. And I've got all these points already for something I didn't do. That sort of bothers me. And Mr. Thomas is correct when he says, well, the legal problems are something that have to come at some later date and be answered probably in the forum. That's true too. But you never buy yourself a lawsuit. It's an old saying, don't create a lawsuit before there is one. And if you pass legislation that sort of is defensive in that regard, why do it?
All right, so,
All right.
so if someone breaks the law, they go to jail, all right, the district attorney says, you know, the judge says you're not, no bail, you're staying in jail until your hearing. It's the same concept with a store. If they're selling something illegal, the district attorney has enough on it, where they say, hey, you know, we got enough on this, you know, they're in trouble.
But this ordinance changes that, right? This ordinance gives us the teeth to shut them down.
No.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, because we could take their
license.
No, we could take their license at the first shot.
But then it transfers
There's
over to.
an accumulation of points over a period of time. You can adjust, within whatever amendments you want to make, adjust the time and the number of points.
But then
And just to correct one thing the judge said, a new owner that comes in, they don't bring with them the points
Right.
that the previous owner did.
Because it has to be a new application.
So,
Correct.
so the points go to the person, not the store.
Correct.
Correct.
So just like Deputy Nunes said, they just transferred over to a friend of theirs. Okay, here you go, we can open it up back again.
No, we
So, I mean, just
They'd
to
have
keep
to-
on task,
they'd
we
have to
should have a
submit a new
meeting
application.
regarding this.
Well, just to note, we're rehashing a lot of the same points
Right.
that we're currently waiting for revisions from Corporation Council on.
Well, we didn't have Deputy Noonan here the other.
Correct, but I'm just, you know,
But I'd like to
the
move forward,
chairperson
that way
did
there
want
we
to move on
can,
to the zoning ordinance.
that way
that's
there
all.
we can get onto the zoning ordinance
All
and
right.
discuss that. We are going to have another meeting with the revisions, with different legislation. That way there we can figure out what works best for us as a council, but at this point, there's no point in rehashing all the same
Okay.
information.
Concur.
Can I just add one other thing? And I don't want to contradict Councilman Beaches, but we have found that a lot of these stores that you're referring to, the problems are throughout all hours of the day, not just at night. I mean, it starts right from 8 AM. We've had cuttings
They're lining up in the
mid-afternoon.
morning.
We've had, there's prostitution in the vicinity of these stores, drug sales, other things going on at the stores. There's no rhyme or reason. It's
Do
all.
you have more problems at night than you do during the day?
I couldn't even, I wouldn't say that, no.
Okay.
I would say it's
They're
throughout the
finding
day.
K2 in the morning.
Yeah, there's a light out the door at certain stores. I don't think it's for coffee in the morning. You know,
Madam Chairman,
I thought it was for numbers.
Counselor, you have the floor.
I just wanted to tell you that today I talked to the Corporation Council, Catherine, and we talked about the amendments. We talked about the fact that they're going to be prepared, and any amendments that you have, you should probably have them in writing, and citing the specific section you want to change. And of course, all amendments have to come to me anyway. I know what you did the other night, and I found that the Corporation Council had no objection to any of that, to tell you the truth, from what I've seen. And I think that if you're going to do something more along that line, we'll give the Corporation Council the courtesy that not only do I get whatever you are thinking of doing, you send a copy to her too. And so that we'll all be on the same page, and we don't have to be doing this piecemeal all the time. So the first amendments have to come in. You got to get that. And when that comes in, any new stuff you have will have to be considered with that. So now we'll go on to what is the bigger topic that's been here for quite a while, is that zoning matter.
Thank you, Judge. Next is ordinance number 9. was sent to us by the law department. It's an ordinance establishing the zoning regulations for the city of Utica. I know there's been some rumble about the fact that we would like notification, and I'm going to open it up to the floor. Questions, concerns? I believe Councilman DeBrango had some concerns regarding this.
Yes, I do. I have a few concerns. I was approached by some business owners, and I did speak to Brian Thomas on this matter, and it just didn't seem fair when they changed the zoning in a specific area. They weren't happy about it because of the, you know, if you go to sell the property later on, something, the value of the property is going to, you know, go down immensely. So I don't know if there's something where we can grandfather somewhat, you know, these businesses in forever, or rezone it, maybe look at rezoning some specific areas. When you look at, I think it was Ridgewood Plaza in South Utica, and they had an auto repair shop, they had a cleaners there, and you compare it to where Tilden Ave is, where they have an auto repair shop, cleaners. I don't believe they were zoned the same, and that was a little concern of mine. So I'd have to look at that a little bit deeper, but I'd have to research that. But I know they weren't satisfied with the change of their zoning in the Tilden Ave area. So I'm going to look at that with my constituents here, and hopefully we can come up with a solution. I don't know if we could have changed the zoning, but maybe amend it. So
If I can
that's
just
concern.
address the grandfathering. Currently, with the zoning that we currently have in place right now, grandfathered uses are allowed to remain for up to 6 months. Once a legal non-conforming use has gone out of business for more than 6 months, it reverts back to the underlying zoning. Under what we have proposed to you and is in front of you for approval, that actually increases to 12 months. So they'd actually have more time, twice as much time under what we're proposing.
Right, is that after they sell it, let's say they own it and they put it up for sale. So
It's
they
after
gotta-
the use is no
Then-
longer there.
Then they have to get a variance after that, am I right?
After the
If
12
they
months.
want to
After
act.
the grandfathering period is over, yes.
So if I'm
And
operating an
that's
auto.
that's what they're worried about, because now you gotta go to all the neighbors again, you gotta notify everybody in whatever, 200-foot area, and there was some issues there. So if they don't have to get a variance now to operate, why do they have to do it in 12 months? And that was their concern, and I'm here to voice.
Well, in
for
some
them.
cases, they might be grandfathered as is. You know,
Yeah, well,
And
I'll
what
let you know
Brian's
the
saying is-
specific area, and then you could, you know, I'm sure we could discuss it.
sure.
Councilmember Williamson, you have the floor.
So, I got two questions here. So do you have a list of what's gonna be turned into light industrial or heavy industrial? Stuff that's gonna happen, if you're doing all these zoning changes, are anything gonna change to the higher level of zoning?
As it relates to industrial, we're not proposing a heavy industrial at all.
Anywhere in the city?
We've eliminated the heavy industrial. It's strictly industrial or industrial mixed use. And the difference really between industrial and industrial mixed use is that there are some sections of the city that are industrial in nature that could lend themselves to residential uses, where people want to have
Those
loft-style
areas,
apartments.
Outline those areas to us so we know what areas it's gonna be changing.
Yes, did you provide maps?
Yeah, did everybody get their maps? I made copies of the most current updated
That's
map.
okay, I'll get the map, I'll look.
It's on the
They
table.
should still be
Yeah, it's on the table.
It's on the kitchen table in there.
It's on the kitchen table.
It's on the kitchen table in the counter.
Judge, you have the floor.
And I got one other thing.
Oh, sorry. Councilman Williamson has
So
one more thing.
We can decide the zoning laws on people's houses, but we can't tell them they gotta accept on their property. I'm just saying.
You're going back to controlling the hours of operation?
I'm just saying, right, but
NICOM, or I believe the Department of State has a advisory memorandum on that issue, and I'd have to go back and take a look at that. It's very difficult, I think, for municipalities to control businesses' hours of operation.
yeah, I mean, that's what we can change zoning on.
This is a big change. Now, how many people, individuals, have legitimately asked you not to do anything to their particular site that have operated for many, many years. Do you know how many there are? And because we had this published, how many people have responded and how many are there? Like 5 people? There is such a thing as non-conforming use, number one. And the law always was bad. Once you have a non-conforming use, you can stay in it, but if you abandon it for 1 year, it's gone. There's 2 things that bother those people. It's the losing it in the first place, and secondly is what happens when they want to sell what was very valuable property. So if we're talking like 3 or 4 places in the city that have complained that you as council person have legitimately decided in your minds you're not ready to pass this without doing something, why don't you treat by legislation and with the consent them as non-conforming uses and put a clause that when it's sold, so long as it's continued business as it has in the past with no changes, they can sell it in the same manner. Now, if you're talking about 4 places out of the whole city of Utica to hold up a big piece of legislation that must have taken forever to put together, and it's very complicated and serves a lot of purposes. I'm sure they didn't do this for no reason at all. That thing needed to be probably revised. But if you're talking about one little microcosm, make them non-conforming uses. And if they're abandoned according to the law, they're abandoned, then that's it. The property reverts to the new zoning. If they sell it while they're still operating, that non-conforming use retains the same use for sale purposes. But then the person who buys it has a non-conforming use with the same, that if he abandons it for 1 year, it reverts to the new zoning. So if you accommodate to pass a big law with just a few revisions, accommodating few citizens of City of Utica who feel that they're being treated badly by this and unfairly, accommodate them and pass the law. And I know that seems simplistic to you, but that's how my mind works. A non-conforming use is a very recognized form of
I
law.
don't think a lot of people.
It's recognized in a different way in every different state. I say here we can do it in any way we want to do it,
Make sure.
if we want to get on with this thing. Now, if you don't want to get on with it, forget everything I've said. But if you do, and you do have a legitimate reason you think like to pass this and take care of maybe that 4 businesses, then I offer you a solution that the Corporation Council, I'm sure, knows how to do and make the right revision.
Councilmember
Maybe this
DeBrango.
helps you, maybe it doesn't. Thank you.
Yeah, Judge, I agree maybe to accommodate, the people that are complaining, but I feel, I know the city, legally, they went through and they made their notifications via the paper, via, online, whatever it may be, but I still feel that most of the business owners don't even know this is existing. That's my opinion. I don't think we've notified enough business owners, and I don't think we've notified enough people, the residents that live in that area. I think we should maybe put it in a tax bill when you mail your tax bills out or something, and this way it will save the city some money and the mailers, but I think that they should be properly notified directly, not through other resources such as online. So that's my opinion. I feel that these business owners do not even know that this is going to exist, and they're going to get caught, and then we're going to hear it. And I think proper notification should be made to each and every
Commissioner
business,
Thomas?
as well as the residents.
You have the floor.
Yeah, if I can address that, we're looking at working with the water authority and putting a notification in with the water bills. I've talked to the comptroller's office, and the next tax bills don't go out until December. I prefer that this not sit on the table until December, but water bills are going out in October, so.
That'd be a good start, thank you.
Councilmember Friend, you have the floor next.
Thank you. I have a couple things. I like that idea with the water bill. I'd like to make just a suggestion about what that might say, is I would be very happy if it said, contact your council member, and gave, I don't know, even a link to the website that lists all of our contact information, but that, you know, or lists all 9 of us or whatever, right? But I think would be nice because I think that's a great idea. So I have another content question though. So I'm on page, well, first of all, I guess I'm not on a page. I have just a general question, but it goes to Mr. DeBrango's question. So is the PDE something that would be a non-conforming use clause? So what I'm wondering is, so St. E's in my ward is PDE, right? Plan Development Extraordinaire, yes. So if MVHS decides to sell it and they sell it, does the next owner have 12 months to enact that PDE?
No,
Why not?
because it's not under PDE, it's not a legal non-conforming use, the hospital.
Right,
And in all likelihood, the next owner isn't gonna wanna operate a hospital. That's where the issue of a legal non-conforming use would come in.
right.
I think you're confusing, you're sort of comparing apples and oranges.
Okay, okay. Let me say it again and see if you can explain again to me why that's the case. So MVHS would say, hey, part of what makes our property so valuable is the fact that it's a PDE, and this new zoning thing is taking that away from me. I am losing your new zoning plan. If you don't give me this grandfather clause, you are robbing me part of the value of my property, which is very similar to Councilman DeBrango's concern.
Well, under the new zoning, PDE goes away,
Right,
and St. E's specifically becomes neighborhood mixed use.
neighborhood mixed use, right.
Correct, so there's a fixed set of uses under neighborhood mixed use.
It's 2 kinds of residential plus commercial, right?
Yeah, it's largely residential type uses.
It's like having apartment
small-
buildings up above and commercial retail
Small
down
retail.
below, yeah, and
Yeah.
having shops and little restaurants.
Could it be a nursing home? Could it be a surgical center?
Under neighborhood mixed use, I don't believe those are
You
permitted.
just pulled the rug out from under them.
You limited their capacity to sell.
They've been well aware of this for
Well,
some
that's
time.
stupid anyways, okay?
What
You
is
got a
what?
hospital there, and you're taking some of the uses of the hospital away if you somebody wants to come in and make it a surgical center. And no, you can't do it because we just changed the zoning.
For what reason would you change
Crazy.
the zoning?
Councilmember Beatrice, you have the floor.
Okay, so my question is, what is the reason that you would change that zoning like that? For what reason?
From PDE?
Yeah, so like he's saying, so let's say a doctor wanted to come in and make it a cancer center, or just giving you a scenario. So he can't do that. What would be the reason to do that? Why would we even change that?
Well, first of all, there's been issues in the past with PDE because it allows virtually everything. So this gives us, the city, a little bit more control over what type of uses. However, don't forget, there's still a use variance that's allowed. If somebody wants to come in and use the hospital space for a hospital and it's not a permitted use, they have a perfect case for a use variance through the zoning board.
Okay, okay, so getting back to my other question, I think the water bill process is wonderful. What I want to know is, are you going to send that to every person, or are you going to send it to, in my belief, I believe anybody's property that is changing at all should be notified.
Here's the problem with that, Councilman. There's 22,279 parcels in the city of Utica. To notify every single property owner would be a minimum of $7,000, even at bulk rate, just for the postage. You then add labor, you then add the envelopes, you then add everything else.
Okay, you just said you're going to be putting it in with the water board, and I agree with that.
The water bill.
In the
Yes.
water bill. Okay,
Yeah.
you just said that. So
Then we're not
that's
paying postage because the water authority.
that's not what I'm asking you. What I'm asking you is, when they get their water bill, is St. Elizabeth's going to be told that their property is changing? I don't think you need to send it to everybody. I think you need to send it to the people whose property is changing.
Virtually every single property is having some element of their zoning regulations changed by the new zoning.
Okay, so let me ask you one other question. Isn't it true that this zoning, to get this zoning done, the city's making $183,000 to get this zoning done? Is that true?
We
Is there,
received a grant.
you received a grant to get it done at $183,000. So for $7,000, we're not gonna tell people what's going on? I mean, I'm not trying to fight you on things, but I'm just telling you the way it is.
The grant was to pay for a planning consultant and a legal consultant to assist in doing this. This, again, as the judge mentioned, this is not a small effort.
This was awarded in 2014.
It takes time to put together a document like this and legislation like this.
Okay,
The
but
last time it
don't
was
you
done-
think it's, like, don't you
the last
really
time
think
it
it's
was done was
important that
1950.
don't you think it's important that our constituents know what's going on? Really? Like, the same thing is,
And I have a
even,
4-page list of every single publication or social media publication that went out on this subject.
Listen,
It
Councilman
hasn't been
DeBrango-
done- It hasn't been done in secret, Councilman.
okay, but Councilman DeBrango hit the nail on the head. I've had, in my whole area, I've had probably 2 people call me, okay? And there's a lot of people, a lot of areas that are changing. They don't even know it's changing. They don't know. They don't read all this. They don't know it. They don't go online. They don't know all that stuff.
I'd say
Then
that's
how are you suggesting we notify them?
How?
Because 99% of people that get a mailing are probably just gonna toss it.
Well, I think you got a great idea. I think you have a great idea with the water bill, but I'm saying to you, I don't think you need to send it to every person in the water bill. I think you need to send it to the people that are changing with a big letter that your zoning is changing, and you have to, if you want to, not protest it, but if you want to speak of it, then there's a time to go talk of it.
I would just like to suggest that it would be easier to send it to every water bill person than to ask the water authority to figure out which water bill people are affected and which aren't.
Okay.
It's actually the easiest,
Here-
most efficient, cheapest thing is to send it to
Also,
every person who gets a water
The
bill.
water bills are gonna go to the business owners as well, which if you just mail to addresses, may not catch the people that you're trying to catch. Okay.
I got one question.
And the other problem with sending it through the tax bills is a lot of people escrow their mortgage, so they're not even gonna get a tax bill.
Well, everybody gets a water bill, right, Brian?
Exactly, that's why we're going for the water
Everybody in
bill.
the city
Count,
gets a letter saying that there's a good possibility that
just
their
talk.
zoning is changed. Then you can let everybody know, but you gotta let everybody in the city know. If you're saying the majority of the people in the city are gonna have a zoning, everybody should get that letter in their water bill.
For more information
Brian?
on this.
And everybody will.
I think that's what
Councilmember Miola, you have the floor.
But hey,
I wasn't clear on that.
Members?
Okay.
Oh, I got the floor. Throw it neutral.
Sorry, he was next.
I was
And
patient.
he yielded
I was patient,
a
very
few
patient.
times.
Brian, just one question. Every tax bill has the suggested zoning correct on it, isn't it?
No.
Tax bill?
No,
Oh, it doesn't.
no, in all likelihood, it uses the assessor's classification code, which is completely different.
Oh, so
and
that's
does not
different.
always match the zoning code.
Okay. All right. That's question number one. You're gonna have to do something because they're gonna get confused. They're gonna see their tax bill. It's gonna say one thing, and we're changing the zoning on something else. That's number one. We
Well,
got-
we're gonna put, the notice is gonna be generic and let them know that basically the zoning, there's a new zoning ordinance and.
So you can
if
have
you're
one
interested
piece
in
of
what-
paper for everybody.
Yeah,
correct?
I
Okay.
can't,
Okay. No, I
I
got you.
can't
You're right.
possibly tailor make.
Nope, I got you. They're gonna have to ask the questions after they read that piece of paper, correct? Okay.
Yeah, and
That's
know
good.
where, and
So
we'll
now
go
you gotta,
get the answers.
you gotta think we're all doing this now. I'm sitting down reading that piece of paper and going, what's this for? And you're like, you're right, half the time I'm gonna chuck it. Okay, let's take the chucking down. Let's say that they chucked it. How can this council protect, like you said, grandfather? Is that clause, the grandfathers in these properties for zoning, in the legislation?
Yes,
And
and
it's,
as I said, it's.
Where
it's-
section
it's-
is it?
It's improved, it's better than
do you know what
what
section
we
it is?
currently have.
I'd just like to read it and make sure it's clear. Because if possible, I like to see if we can move that to not only the owner, or when the owner sells the property, next owner has the same right.
They do, it's based on
They
the
do.
use.
Okay.
So if you're a dry cleaner and you discontinue for 11 months and you sell the business to a dry
No,
cleaner.
no, I know the months, I know
carry
the
on,
months. But
That next person can sell the building and they still have 11 months after that.
but you're right, Christopher. They have only 11-month grace period. Anything over that, they would have to go
Right.
for a variance.
But that you just asked if we could change it so that it stays.
Is there possible we can change it so that person has one sell? In other words, the owner of the property paid 20 years on this property, okay, taxes and everything else. Is it possible that that owner can have one sell with the same zoning so there's no problem? That's the whole intent of this council, that's what we're thinking. Because
Base
I
it
have a
on the
piece,
sale rather than a time frame.
right, based on sale. One sale.
Okay.
In other words, if possible, the legislation states, will say, community, commercial, what is it, commercial community? I forgot what.
Community commercial currently.
Community commercial. And we're changing it to neighborhood mixed use, okay? But that owner, the day he wants to sell it, it continues that use for the next buyer. One sell.
We'd have to look into that legally.
Because I think that would ease everybody's mind, and I think it also ease the constituents' mind, because, hey, I'm paying taxes on that property for commercial for 20 or 30 years. I want to sell it for commercial. I want to sell it for what I've been paying taxes for. So the grandfathering does work, but I want to be able to transfer my work, my value of the property, because that property is valued at that zoning, okay? It's valued at a certain amount for the commercial, and it's valued at a certain amount for neighborhood mixed use. You know that, and I know that. The amount may decrease for neighborhood mixed use, and the buyer may decrease, okay? The value of the property may decrease with that. So our job is to protect the owner for at least the value of the property at the sale.
I would suggest that the council might want to consider maybe possibly extending the 12 months to maybe 18 or 24 months.
All right, that's an avenue that may resolve the problem, but I'm trying to work out that, because say Frankie owns a property, or Mark owns a property, or anybody here owns a piece of property, our zoning gets changed, and you took the zoning qualifications down, we lost value in that property. I just want to give that owner the opportunity at least one time to sell it for what he invested in.
But I think if you look at a comparison of the uses, we're not, I have it here. The only thing we're changing in going from community commercial to neighborhood mixed use is we're adding residential uses as permitted. The commercial uses are virtually stay the same between the two
Neighborhood mixed
districts.
use, you can still have a dry cleaner and a convenience store, well, not a
You can still
convenience
have it's not a dry cleaner, it's a pickup.
store. Right.
Dry cleaners aren't permitted in community commercial now, and neither are auto body
But
repairs.
some of these buildings are designed specifically for a certain business,
And
whether,
that's why it's a textbook case for a use variance. They would have no issue getting a use variance through the zoning board of appeals, the next owner.
I know,
If
but
you show the zoning board of
but
appeals.
you're telling
that
me
you've
you
got
have to
a
go get a
property that has
variance to
lifts in it,
run your business, or run the business that you've had for 30 years, and now you have to go get a variance because the zoning changed, and that should not be right. That should not be, they should not have to go to because what if the neighbors shoot it down? What if, you know what I mean?
You gotta get
You
the
have to-
opportunity to sell the property.
You don't know
once,
that.
at
You
least.
don't know what's gonna
If
happen,
it's
so
been
you're
there for
putting
30
this.
years and operated as a good business, why would the neighbor shout it?
You don't know. You don't know. There's new neighbors, and maybe they want housing there instead of an auto shop or whatever it may be. So I don't think that's fair to the owners that own the property right now. That's my opinion. That's all.
They should have the right to sell it once, at least.
Councilmember Friend, you have the floor.
I just want to say, I think it's clear that we need a committee meeting of the whole about this, and we all are willing to carve out 2 or 3 hours. We've got a lot of stuff. It's a big piece of legislation. You've worked on it for a long time. It has really important implications for the city. I think we all need that. So,
I agree, and I'd be more than happy to attend
I'm
with
sure.
my staff, and
Yep.
if it's sketched out far enough, I'll have the planning consultant there as well.
that would be great. I do want to say that you and your staff and those consultants were really generous and gave me, I don't know how long that took, an hour and a half or so. We poured over the document in terms of a number of fairly sort of grammatical and formatting kind of concerns I had. Are you going to bring us back the document with those changes?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Because we're not going to, and so Judge, if you could help me on this, we have to be introduced into committee, has to be the final version of the legislation before we can work on it legislatively, correct, Judge?
I think when
Before we can amend it.
you have it scheduled a public hearing. When you schedule a public hearing, you should have a document that you've already amended and you're ready to adopt. This is the one that you're gonna adopt
Well, no, I
if
understand.
after the public hearing.
I
After
understand.
the public hearing, you might not adopt the document.
No, I understand all that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that I've already suggested to the commissioner and his team and the consultants a number of fairly, picayune, but a long list of picayune corrections to make. We can't start we can't treat it as an actual piece of legislation until those have been changed, right? Because no one wants me to make 87 amendments for grammar. Correct? Are you following?
You're a legislative
If I can
body.
weigh in,
You can
correct.
technically do anything you want.
Unanimity.
So regarding the piece of legislation that's in front of us,
Councilperson
Yeah.
Friend, you asked me a question, I give you an answer. You're a legislative body. You can do whatever that the legislative body can do when you want to do it. And I can't stop you from doing that.
Okay.
I think at some point, you have to have a public hearing on a document that you think is in final form and the people out there are gonna be arguing about.
Okay.
And that's what you should do.
Commissioner Thomas.
So you're gonna have to
one-
resolve this piece of legislation and then call for a public hearing. Because the planning board, as I understand it, had a public hearing and they've approved the document.
They
Am I
made a
correct?
recommendation to the council.
Yeah, so they approved it
haven't
as
approved anything.
is. So,
So my question is this, this came in front of us for a specific reason. Is this holding up anything that's under time constraints that you're hoping to have this passed sooner than later and then have amendments made later? Is that something that you are looking for? Just because there's any projects in the fire that this is holding up, I think that's something we should also know too.
I'd have two answers to that. One is, we do have a grant that I would like to close out at some point for this effort.
Is there a time
They,
and date on that?
the agency that awarded the funds has been working with us so far. At some point, they're gonna wanna know that the end is in sight and that the council is looking to adopt something as far as
Well, you can tell them that already.
as far as a new zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Again, the beginning was 2014.
Right, but I don't want to lose out on that grant money either,
Right, that's
you know?
understood.
So if it needs to be tweaked afterwards, that's something we should know too.
The other issue is there are developments underway, and when they meet with my staff, the first question is, what ordinance should we design the project to? The current zoning ordinance or the new zoning ordinance? And at this point, I don't have an answer for them because I don't know. I haven't
Okay,
seen the
so
end in
once
sight yet.
everybody's notified through the water board, the water bills that are gonna go out, I think then we're gonna get together and figure everything out, correct?
I think that we should have, I think that we should have a committee meeting of the whole.
I agree.
Carve out 3 hours.
Next.
Maybe
The
more.
commissioner can come. I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
good document and we should get it right.
Just to go back to your question again, though, we also have been working with Northrop Grumman, a Fortune 100 company which owns a sizable piece of property in South Utica, on the corner of French and Seward. They're looking to remediate that property, but in working with DEC, their remediation standards depend on what the zoning is. So we've been working with them on what the proposed zoning is going to be. And it's, right now, without the new zoning in place, it's somewhat holding up their remediation. And it's a project that South Utica
Here's that.
asks about at every single South Utica
Okay.
meeting.
What's the proposed
Pre-
amount? What's the proposed?
Industrial.
Another Gilmore Village.
President
But it was
Kalimi,
those
you have the
discussions
floor.
with them that, out of which grew the industrial mixed use.
Okay.
Because they didn't want residential on their property
Well, you can't, yeah,
because of the cleanup standards. So they're going to be held.
I got one thing, Maria, that's it.
President Kalimi has the floor and then you can have it right after.
If it's quick, I'll yield to him first, that's fine. Because I was gonna kind of wrap it up with something too.
Yeah, I just, one quick thing, I didn't look at the map, but for historic districts, is that gonna expand, and what constitutes historic? How many years? I mean, you know, when they did this 1950, right, so the house is from 1840 something, whatever, that constituted historic, right?
No, there's a locally designated scenic and historic preservation district. That district, those boundaries are not changing under this.
All right, now, are they expanding because for 2020, some of these properties in South Utica?
We are not changing the boundaries. The boundaries of that district are staying as they are currently.
But could they?
At a time in the future,
They could,
but they were never set up.
understand you're gonna have a whole lot more people concerned about that, though.
Well, I'm talking, you know, parts of South Utica where the houses are 150, 200 years old.
Sure, I'll go
Now,
last, just,
you know, a place 100 years old, whatever time when they put the historic district in. When did they put that in?
1994?
That's when they put it in, that's when everything was
Yes.
solidified? as
And I don't believe it was
historic?
just based necessarily on age of the structures.
Scott?
No. It was just the general style and aesthetic, if there were specific specimens within that district that they wanted to maintain the aesthetic. You know, and as you'll see on the map, it's generally, I wasn't there for this, I was in kindergarten. But you guys might remember that it's along the corridors of, you know, Utica's main streets. You've got Genesee Street essentially all the way until North Utica. All of Herkimer Road, the Parkway, Parkway East.
But like
When you're on the Parkway East,
Proctor Boulevard was developed by Homestead.
it was. And there's a couple of neighborhoods that were designed and set up by the firm, but the housing, you know, the age varies. If we put everything in there that was over a certain age, eventually the whole city is going to be within the historic district.
Councilmember DeBrango,
Okay.
you have the floor.
Yeah, just a quick question. Who are we going to target, you know, when we send out these mailers? Are we targeting the business owners? Are we targeting the property owners? Or because a lot of times, a tenant may get the water bill and not the actual property
We're putting
owner.
it in every water
So-
bill that goes to a Utica residence, a Utica address.
Every,
So every visit, anybody that gets a water bill
Okay.
within the city of Utica.
thank you.
Councilmember Beatrice, and
Yeah.
please keep it quick.
Very quick. Mr. Thomas, in this note that you're going to send to the people, basically you're going to say that the zoning is changing in the city of Utica. Be prepared, you know, check your property to see if it's changed or something like that,
We'll
correct?
direct them to the website, we can direct them to the council people, your council people's contact information.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
just,
Could
I'm
you,
not
could
trying to
you
give
send
you a
us a
hard
copy of
time.
that letter that's going to go out,
Yeah.
so we can just see it?
Before
Yeah.
you send it
I'm
out.
just very concerned that somebody's, when you get a letter that doesn't specifically address you, that you're liable to throw it away. Where if they got a letter, and I understand that you probably can't do it, it said, 524 Reels Drive, your zoning is changing.
Yeah, we can't do that.
And what I would
Okay.
say to the residential people that might throw this out is that most of the residential neighborhoods are not going to be impacted by this.
They're not significant changes,
So,
but there are some changes, like setbacks.
right.
Go from, I think it's 20 feet in a RS1 district, down to, I believe it's 15 feet under the proposed.
The only people that won't get notified are the people that just own property and there's no water usage. So that's the only people that won't get notified.
Vacant lots.
Yeah.
Thank you. President Galimi, you have the floor.
All right.
You sure?
Yeah.
We good?
No.
No, I'm sorry. All right, so the question of brevity came up a couple times. This has been through multiple revisions. As Mr. Lawrence said, this started in 2014, and also the previous council dealt with this, which it ultimately went back due to the heavy industrial controversy that had happened in North Utica, and now this is back to the council again. The next thing, the documentation. If we're going to have a committee meeting, I want to just duly note the fact that the entire map, which has been provided in paper copy, is also on the eCode 360 site, available to not only the public, but all of the council, as is the entire piece of legislation. So if we are going to put forth a good couple hours, I would urge us all to, even if we've read it once or twice prior, to go through all that again and make sure we come to that. And the clerk, even though we do have all this, can you email out the link to those two specific documents to the full council?
I will do so.
Right, no, I know, I'm aware they are, but, you know, just, you know, so that we all have it, in accordance with this. And then,
And these are searchable documents, so if you have
Yes.
something specific that you're looking for, you don't have to peruse you can
Control F. Control
and then
F is
type in
key
the
here.
word or phrase that you're looking for, and it'll bring you, it's very helpful.
Right, and when you do, and it's nice to look at the paper map, but the document, the power of looking at the document on, like Chris was saying, on the computer, and using a Control F like convenience store. How many times did that come up? Or, you know, curb, fence, any of these things you want to look into to see how the new process will work. You could just search the whole document electronically. The last thing I wanted to say, it's something that the judge had brought up. Commissioner Thomas has brought this up. DeBrango, Miola, a couple other people brought up different flavors of this, which is the grandfathering. I was going to send this out as just an email to the council, but I'll just say it now so we can consider this. and Commissioner Thomas, I'd like you to potentially look into this as well. Rather than having a time, and right now I'm not thinking of necessarily the current owners, I'm thinking about the actual land, the actual buildings, and Roosevelt Plaza, Ridgewood, the considerations on Tilden. Those are the things I'm thinking about here, rather than having it grandfathered based on months. Now, obviously, if someone has a store operating out of a two-family house, or a garage of a two-family house, or even a garage of a single-family residence that's actually a house that people are living in, that makes perfect sense to have that fall back to an R1 or R2 zoning, right? But if you have a facility like a Ridgewood Market, a Roosevelt Plaza, where M&M Cleaners was prior, clearly no one's going to just move in and potentially use those as a house. Okay, Ridgewood Market is Ridgewood Market right now. You know, it has the deli and it has the mechanic place. So could you tie the grandfathering in to the actual changes that could be made to the building? So for example, let's say Ridgewood, the Ridgewood Plaza sells. Rather than that, if they have trouble renovating it or what have you, falling back to an R1, which it would right now, okay, which obviously no one's going to put single-family houses where Ridgewood Plaza is unless they tear the whole place down, okay? Rather than having that fall back, why can't the grandfather clause simply be tied to the modification of the property? So that if the next owner doesn't modify it drastically or any change, okay, it's still just a plaza, it stays that zoning. Because I know you're concerned with spot zoning, okay? And that's what you're concerned with. But anyone in their right mind, knowing that, I think it would fall under urban mixed use maybe, the Ridgewood Plaza, right? Let's just say, for example, if that stayed urban mixed use in the new zoning amongst an R1 neighborhood, I don't think anyone would really think that's spot zoning. I think that would be a pretty strong reflection of what it actually is. So just consider the modification of the property. Look into that, because I know some other cities do that.
Thank you, Mr.
Potentially.
Thank you, Mr.
And
President.
that's all I've got. That's
Councilman,
all I've got.
Councilman Lemetico, last
Brian,
thought
I'm driving you crazy
on
today,
this?
thank you, Maria. But this complete street thing that you put out today
Oh, yeah.
on the,
Well,
the
that
website,
that the mayor put out?
thank you. Don't throw them under the bus, all right, Brian?
Sounds like there's a bus.
But anyways,
On behalf of the engineering department,
Under the bicycle, in the bicycle.
this has nothing to do about turning Genesee Street into a two-lane road, does it?
Well, the pop-up that they're suggesting is going to take place does turn it into a two-lane road.
Right, I don't think there's
Temporarily.
anybody in this room that would
Would you
agree
like to do a
with
poll on
that.
that one,
And we're
Brian?
gonna be sending a letter to the mayor.
Well, there's actually a survey, so you can take the survey and let
Well,
your,
I'm not,
let your voice be heard.
I'm not concerned about a survey. We're gonna be sending a letter to the mayor and telling him that we don't want it. And if it has to come through the council, it's gonna get voted down to turn Genesee Street into, from a two-lane to from a four-lane to a two-lane. Please let them know that, thank you.
I will do that.
meeting adjourned. Do I have a second?
I'm not really sure how he feels about this.
5 minutes, what do we get?
5 minutes, yes. All right, so let's call it,
Quarter after.
we'll begin at, well, it is quarter after. That clock's all messed up.
Very well put.
We're gonna start at 20. All right. 7:30, I'm going to call this meeting of the Common Council of the City of Utica to order. Please call the roll.
McNeil, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Moody, Beatrice, Williamson, Lemetico, DeBrango, Galimi, all present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for the deceased members of the council. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a pretty quick agenda this evening. We're going to move through our legislation as we normally do, and then I'm going to, after we're done with our legislation, allow Councilperson Friend to introduce a guest that we have from Hamilton College this evening. First order of business is the public hearing, and we have no pieces this evening to which we have a public hearing, so the public hearing is now closed. Clerk, have the minutes been distributed? I did see them.
The minutes were posted on Eco 360 on September 2nd for the council and for the public to view.
I
Thank
would
you.
like to move that we waive the reading of the minutes, please.
Do we have a second?
Second it.
We have a second from Moody. Any opposed to waiving of the reading of the minutes? Thank you. I'd like to start with the reports from the officers this evening. Assistant Chief Noon, do you have anything?
Nothing.
Okay. Deputy Chief Noonan?
Nothing to report.
Corporation Counsel?
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Thomas?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Commissioner Phillips?
Nothing to report.
Thank you very much. Do we have any communications from the mayor this evening or cash reports, et cetera?
There are no communications from the mayor, but we do have the city cash report for August 2020, and the total is $27.65 million received and filed.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move to remonstrances, appeals, and legislation from the floor. First District and Majority Leader Maria McNeil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Really quick, I just wanted to wish my daughter a happy 5th birthday, and she also has the same birthday as Councilman Lemetico. I want to wish him a happy birthday as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Happy 80th, Jack.
It's 5-2.
She got a lot of drinks tonight, right?
Moving forward, I would like to move resolution number 6, the proclamation honoring Angela Padone Longo.
Would you like to summarize that, please?
Yeah.
Okay. Or read it in
Where-
its entirety.
I'll read it. Whereas Angela Padone Longo, for many years, worked as a Democratic commissioner of the Oneida County Board of Elections, as someone that started off as a humble factory worker and had the opportunity to go into public service. She acquired the skills to become the secretary and mayor Dominic Acero until 1971. Whereas Angela then began working for the Democratic Deputy Commissioner at the Oneida County Board of Elections until her appointment by County Chairman Carlo Morris as Democratic Commissioner in 1978, until her retirement in 2009. Whereas Angela was a very dedicated to the Democratic Party, helping candidates win elections for the mayors, district attorneys, legislators, council members, judges, and congressmen. Angela always was held in the highest regards and esteem with dignified elected officials, whereas Angela donated many hours of personal time, always attended political functions, fundraisers, and giving her all in daily operations for running elections. Angela, even after retirement, was still very active and lending a hand and advice for Democratic Committee, whereas Angela shared a close bond with staff and was like a mother and sister figure to all staff at the Board of Elections. Angela also loved many friends like a part of her own family, living in Utica in her family home after all her life, even when she married the love of her life, Mariano Mo Longo, whereas Angela's life revolved around her family, friends, cooking and baking. Angela also loved her chili dogs. She loved her family most of all, with her nieces, nephews, great nieces, and nephews. We're proud to call her Aunt Chili. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Utica Common Council recognizes the dedication and love that Angela had for her family, friends, and work. Be it further resolved, this proclamation will forever be inscribed into the minutes of the City of Utica Common Council meeting on the 16th day of September 2020.
Do we have a second? We have a second from Miola. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Anything else?
That'll be all, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Second District, Councilman Burmaster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a piece of legislation for a one-way signs. Ordain that Section 2-16365, Schedule A, one-way streets, Warren Street, 1200 block between York and Lenox eastbound, our traffic would enter at York and Warren and exit at Lenox and Warren be rescinded. I'd like to make a motion on the floor.
We have a second from Miola. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
And at this time, I like to thank the police department for the way they handle the situation. It's never a good time when somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do, and I want to commend the Utica Police Department and their handling of the situation and how swift and effective that they were. But thank you again, and I thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Third District,
Thank you.
Councilperson Friend, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to briefly address the events over the weekend here in Utica. I mean, I know that everybody in this room knows what happened, but I do want to talk about it briefly. So, following the incident with Officer Felito, a group called the Utica Abolitionists planned a protest and rally at Oneida Square, and then they were going to march down to the police station and continue their protest. They advertised that openly and publicly on Facebook. And then on, I believe it was Friday, I'm happy to be corrected if I get any of these dates wrong, some evildoer out there, I don't know who it was, but posted a false ad on Craigslist claiming that it was a false ad calling for paid protesters to go to the New Hartford Shopping Center in order to loot and pillage the New Hartford Shopping Center so that it could be turned over to black businesses who wouldn't have to pay any rent. It was really a crazy Craigslist ad, illegal, terrible, as I said, really evil stuff. And as if that wasn't bad enough, then a rumor started sweeping through Utica and really took hold that there were hordes of Antifa protesters headed to Utica on buses, that the motels and hotels in North Utica were filling up, and that we should all be really, really afraid. So Saturday, something that has nothing to do with council or city business, I was very busy all day and always knew I would be sitting in front of my computer running a virtual festival down in Norwich. So I had to do that all day Saturday in any case. But I also spent the day pushing back against these false rumors on Facebook. And my partner went out and took a video that showed that Utica was calm and beautiful on that beautiful Saturday afternoon. We made 4 posts on Facebook in which I encourage people to not believe this rumor and to not be frightened, and to tell people that I had been in touch with the police department, that I had good evidence that none of this was borne out by any evidence that we had. My partner actually called all the motels. The police called the motels. So I spent the day pushing back on social media, and the thing that's kind of interesting about that is that we made, my partner and I made 4 posts on Facebook that got shared 200 times. He also took a short video driving in the car down Genesee Street. That was one of the posts that got shared a lot. 8,100 people ended up looking at that video. It was a lovely little video that showed that all was well in Utica. So I spent the day really pushing back against this because it is such and was such an incredibly dangerous rumor to be spreading. So the thing that kept me on pins and needles all day Saturday was the worry that some person would believe this rumor and come to Utica to defend Utica, right, with a gun. I was really nervous about this. We have seen this happen in other places in the country. So I spent the day doing everything I could do while I was also meeting a work obligation to push back against this rumor. I know that the chief of police did the same thing. Councilmember Moody did the same thing. There were a number of us out there pushing back against this rumor. These rumors are really dangerous for the obvious reason that I stated. They're also really morally corroding. It encourages us to think of the world in cynical ways. And I've actually written about this, published philosophy papers about the danger of cynicism and the danger of giving in to the adage of better safe than sorry. We're not always better when we take the adage better safe than sorry. What we start doing is we start seeing the world as really hostile when it is not as hostile as our worries might lead us to believe it is. So I just wanted to comment on that. I commend the police department for doing a good job of making an effort to get the word out, to Councilmember Moody, who got the word out, to my partner, who helped me get the word out. And we sort of spent all day Saturday getting that word out. And in the end, the little old group of Utica abolitionists had their protest and had their little march, followed by another little protest. And nobody showed up to do us harm. And the plywood makers of America made a good little profit off some shop owners in New Hartford. So bully for the plywood producers of America. I do want to encourage people not to give in to this kind of false rumor. It's bad for us in a whole bunch of ways. And I think, and I've actually talked to some constituents since then who said that, one constituent in particular said his parents are in their 90s, they don't have internet, and his parents spent the day just petrified of the idea that there were people headed to Utica to do us all harm, and there just weren't. So terrible hoax in the first place, but then I also bear some of that blame for what happened on Saturday is on the people who give in to the idea that these hoaxes are real. So I find that very worrisome and problematic. And I think that the evidence for how worried Utica was the fact that we got 8,100 shares on that video. I don't tell you that in order to boast about my social media prowess, but in order to show what a need there was in the city for reassurance. Like, that's how I interpret how many shares we got off that video. People needed to be told that the world is safe. And the fact is, on Saturday, the world in Utica was a pretty safe place. Okay, that said, Mr. President, I would like to bring forward proposed ordinance number 4. Ordain Section 216360 Schedule E, no parking at all times, is amended to include the following: Ballantyne Bray, south side from Genesee Street to the frontage of 20 Ballantyne Bray. Be it further ordained that the proper signage be erected where necessary.
Do we have a second? We have a second from Burmaster. Your votes.
9 needs adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Anything? Okay, thank you. 4th District and President Pro Temp, Councilman Miola, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank the Majority Leader for reading that proclamation. I probably get a little emotional, and that's why I asked you to do it, because I don't want to see me tear-jerking around you guys. But I just want to tell you guys, Angie worked very hard for us. Even in our last election, she screened all our petitions, she organized our petitions, she put our packages together. She was an asset for the Democratic Party. She was there for us at the beginning, and none of that system really changed since she was in. You know, you still had to go out there and get petitions. You still had to go out there and make sure the petitions were done right. You know, the bottom half. We all go crazy trying to fill out the bottom half when we first started. And she was there to teach me, and believe me, she drilled it into me like a bandsaw. So I'll never forget what she taught me. And what she taught me, I passed on to my colleagues, and to teach them how to do the same. So it keeps on going. Maybe you'll teach somebody else how to fill out the bottom of those petitions one day. So she's going to be missed, and especially I'm going to miss her a lot. So thank you for. And those of us who would like to go to the wake, I forgot the name of the funeral home. It's on Court and York Street. It's tomorrow, and it's from 4 to 7. Okay, so those of us who could attend, it would be really appreciative. Like I said, she helped us a lot in our elections, even our past one. Thank you. Thank you for doing her proclamation in such a short time period. Mr. President, I'd like to start with ordinance number 1.
All right.
Amending section 2-6-4, fencing requirement. We're just doing a little cleanup, council. This is the section that provides our approval for any fences that are erected over 6 foot 3 inches, and of course needs our approval. This is just striking a section out that's stated $10, which is archaic, and just to reference section 2-29447A1 for all fees and permits.
Okay. We have a second? We have a second from Moody. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Mr. President, I'd like to start with ordinance number 2.
Okay.
Amending section 2-2444, fence regulation. This cost of the fence wasn't changed since 2016. I do believe a $10 additional charge. It was $25, up to $35 for each permit text parcel. I did see a few ladies and gentlemen out there, so a few constituents put it on multiple properties when they get their fence permit. So they're doing like the whole block for one permit. So I do believe they should be charged per parcel, especially 2 or 3 parcels that they own next door. Mr. President, call for a vote.
We have a second?
Right?
That was Williamson. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Mr. President, I have one more ordinance resolution number 3. Adding 2 feet of lattice white fence to 1412 Hillside to be ordained. The Common Council of the City of Utica does hereby grant John M. Nolan of 1412 Hillside Road in the City of Utica permission to add 2 feet of lattice white fencing on top of his existing 6-foot fence.
Second?
McNeil.
We have a second from McNeil. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Thank you. That ends the legislation this evening. I'm going to be moving on to Councilman Moody, 5th District. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to say a few things in terms of last weekend. My phone, as a lot of people's phones were going off. I know Councilman Beatrice's phone was, my phone was the hottest phone. His was the second hottest in the city. We were getting calls all day, Friday, well, evening Friday and Saturday, concerned about this protest in Utica. And, you know, it really was a combination of both fear, but I think also it brought into a few sentiments of different aspects about the argument in terms of Officer Felito. So, I mean, I'm not going to be on this all night. The only thing that I do want to keep in mind is the focus of this moment. And I don't want people in this room or in the city to rope together the incident with Officer Felito, the current state of the Utica Police Department, the current cry for justice by Black Lives Matter, and the honorable work, in my opinion, that's being done by the Utica Police Reform Board. They're not all in the same category. They're not all in the same group. And we have to continue to be focused. We have to deal with this Officer Felito situation as it is being dealt with, but I don't want that conversation to be roped in with the other conversations that we're having about legitimate work of reforming our police, the Utica Police, not the National Police Department that we don't have, but making real reforms for where we are as a city and where we want to improve to be. With that, Mr. President, I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. 6th District, Councilman Beatrice, you have the floor.
Yes. First thing I want to reiterate what Delvin said. I'd also, you guys all know, I sent you a text on Friday night. I was a little bit discouraged that I had to be getting calls and did not know about what was happening. I would have liked to have been tipped off. Very simply, we get 1,000 different emails every day. We could have very simply received an email that said, hey, be on the alert, this is going on. That being said, after I did find out what was going on, I have to give my regards to Chief Williams and Deputy Chief Noonan. They kept me abreast of everything that was going on from Friday 6 o'clock till Saturday, probably 7:30, 8 o'clock. And I'm sure that Celeste and Delvin weren't the only ones taking calls. We all were elected as council people. And the one thing that I ran on all the time, I don't need to put 1,000 things on Facebook, but if somebody calls me, I talk to that person live or go to them to assure them that their safety. And I just want to know, I mean, I'm sure all of you guys do the same because we've all talked offline. So again, I want to thank you guys for everything you did. And you're doing a great job, and hopefully everything works out for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council at Large and Minority Leader Mark Williamson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple things. Over the last couple of weeks after all this issues with resisting arrest and everything else, I talked to Judge and, how cops, reform on one side of the fence, it should be reform on both sides of the fence. So I asked the judge to, come up with legislation so I could send up to the state, hopefully with the council's support, to change the laws for resisting arrest, make it more stringent, protecting our police officers from the knuckleheads out there who are trying to coax them into combat, I guess you would call it. And so I'm planning that because I think reform works on both sides of the fence, just not one side of the fence. And I know we got to deal with a Democratic governor, I guess you want to call it. So we're going to forward it all the way up. Hopefully it gets some legs at the state assembly and with the state senators. And it needs to come both ways. It shouldn't be just one side, all right? Because I think the laws need to be updated for these criminals. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Council at Large, Jack Lemetico, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to introduce my guest, Anthony Leone. Welcome aboard, our Oneida County legislator. Want to come and visit us. Thank you. I appreciate you coming, and I welcome any county legislator who'd like to come and visit our meeting. You're more than welcome. Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Hey, by the way, Tony found a dead rabbit in my dryer yesterday. I don't know how we got in there. He found a dead rabbit in my dryer yesterday.
Eat it, Josh.
That's all I had was 2 little feet left of the rabbit.
Oh, poor guy.
Lucky feet.
That was like a real roast.
Well, glad we got that.
All right. On a serious note, I was up with friends with Angie Leone, and my condolences to her family. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman, and she treated both sides, Democrats, Republicans, equally. And everybody, every citizen in the city of Utica is gonna miss her presence. So rest in peace, Angie. And finally, if you remember in our last meeting here, we passed unanimously the essential workers sign that's going to go up on Kemmel Street between Grove and Hobart, honoring the essential workers who worked tirelessly through this COVID epidemic. And we plan on having a ceremony. Looks like it's going to be the September 30th, about 10:30. Somewhere on Kemmel Street, have a get together with the councilman and figure out where would be a good place to put it and to set that up. So put it on your calendar once again, the 30th of September at 10:30 as it sits now. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council at Large, Frank DeBrango.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to express my condolences to Angie Padon-Longo. She was one of a kind. She knew every tidbit. When you needed some help during the elections, she was there for you. And like I think Miola said, had all the fundraisers. Very supportive. She was a true leader for our party, and she will be missed. On another note, I just spoke to Chief Noonan, and they had a recruitment for the UPD test, Utica Police Department test, and it's going to be coming up again. I think they did a damn good job recruiting. I think we're up 20% from the last class, the last test class. So that's on a good note. Hopefully, we'll be able to get a good amount of police officers out of this next class. It's tough being a police officer today. Obviously, you see all the video out there and people antagonizing them and things of that nature. So I commend the people for wanting to take this career. It's a tough career, but I think it's a very rewarding career. I have some good friends that were in the police department. They're in there now, and I have some that retired. And I have the utmost respect for police officers. With that being said, I think we can end this meeting.
We're close. We can't end it just yet. All right. Thank you very much. Legislator Leone, thank you for coming. At the last meeting, we had brought up the fact that potentially we could have a committee meeting in the near future where hopefully we could wrangle all of the, I think, six legislators for Utica, which sit in a county seat, and we can come together and discuss all of the different projects and activities that the city of Utica and the county are working on, and the county's working on within Utica. So thank you for coming, and I appreciate it. At this time, before we close the meeting, we do have a guest, and I'd like to give the floor to Councilperson Friend to introduce our guest from Hamilton College. I'll just give you the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm introducing tonight as a guest speaker Dr. Frank Anacarico. Frank is the Maynard Knox Professor of Law and Government at Hamilton College. He is a widely published and highly regarded scholar of constitutional law, public administration, and criminal justice. He is at the beginning stages, fairly early stages, of organizing a community-wide college community partnership for racial justice, and I'm going to let him tell you more about that.
Thank you, Celeste. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, there you go.
Thank you very much. I have a great deal of respect for elected officials, so this is a real pleasure to be here tonight. Besides, the movie theaters are closed, so, okay. I represent what we call the College Community Partnership for Racial Justice. Our goal is to support and also provide research and background material for the committee that is in operation here, the Police Reform Committee. One of the members of our committee is Tony Colon, as you know, in addition to his many other roles in the community, is also a member of that Reform Committee, as well as the president, I guess the chair of the Access and Inclusion Committee. So our partnership includes Herkimer College, MVCC, Pratt MWP, SUNY Poly, Utica College, and Hamilton College. That's all the institutions of higher education in the two counties. All of the presidents of these institutions have been very supportive of us. And the idea that we have here, as I say, is to marshal our resources to provide support for what every municipality in the two counties is required to do by the state, which is to come up with racially sensitive, publicly sourced proposals for reform. Now, I think I've already had conversations with the mayor, with Chief Williams, with Deputy Chief Noonan, with Marcus. Celeste and Delvin have been very supportive. And we have also very close cooperation with Judge Ralph Yanis, who can't be a member of our committee because of his position in the court, but has been very supportive of us. So as I say, our purpose is to marshal the resources of these colleges to assist local government in responding to the mandate. So how have we done this? Several ways. We commissioned a poll by Zogby that's already been completed of the two counties on people's opinions on public safety, on racial justice, their own experience, encounters with the police. Half of those respondents were in Utica, Rome. The other half were distributed between Herkimer County and the other parts of Oneida County. So we have a scientifically verifiable set of opinions and experiences from the people in these communities. That's one. We've also organized a webinar series that will be broadcast on UTR station WPNY starting a week from tonight at 7 o'clock that will deal with all these issues. We're going to deal with issues of racial justice, very specific things like use of force, like recruitment, like training. We have people like Troy Little from the MVCC Department of Law Enforcement, who's a former state trooper, leading a panel on questions of training and recruitment. This will allow people, because it's not only going to be broadcast, but will also be a webinar to actually exchange with us questions and comments. All of these things can be accessed through our website, which is communityforjustice.org. All right, so that's sort of a portal through which people can access the website. And also, the last thing, which is perhaps the most important to those sitting around the outside here who represent individual constituencies, and that's through the United Way, we got access to their emergency 211 system, which is now being used to deploy the same survey that Zogby deployed, right, in a general way in the two counties. But now anyone with a phone can take it. It just went active today. I did it myself. Right, you dial 898-211, and you text MV Justice, and you get brought through the entire survey. Now that will allow anybody to get an assessment of what their individual constituents in their own district think about these issues. And there are a wide variety of questions that were raised. I'm sorry.
Can you repeat the number?
It's yes, it's 898. That makes it free, and then 211. 898-211, and what you type in is MV Justice.
So that's the text. It's not a voice call.
You text. That's right. It's the whole thing is a text. Now it gives you the option, if you don't want to do it by text, to do it by voice. They'll actually ask you the questions, but basically it just brings you. It's smooth as silk. It works very well. And that's also available through the same website, right? So you can get linked to it through this website. So I think that's something that will give the Reform Commission additional data. One of the things that's required by the state is that there be some public feedback on reform proposals. We ask questions about a number of things. So, I guess the question then is sort of what we can do for you. I think when you talk to people around this area and elsewhere about what police reform might constitute, there are several things that come up all the time. And one is dealing with misconduct by people with mental illness. That's a big one. Responding to domestic violence. Establishing fair and effective oversight of law enforcement. And recruiting a diverse class of new officers. Right? That's something that we've heard is a challenge. Each of these is addressed in our survey. And as I say, you can get responses to these matters specifically by publicizing the 898-211. So what we'd like to do, in cooperation with the committee here and with any of you who may have additional issues that you'd like us to address, is analyze the survey data in terms of those issues and others, because it's very broad scoped, and put those together with our research on best practices from around the country and beyond. Right? We have a group of very talented students that work right now on resourcing, looking at all the scholarship, all the think tank information, everything that's available that departments have tried in other jurisdictions around the country on each of these issues. So we can package these things in reports that you all can use in your responses to the state. Those can all be ready by December. And as I say, in cooperation with the committee, we can come up with other issues that you may be interested in. We've had very good conversations with the deputy chief and the chief here about what they might be interested in, and I've been exchanging email just yesterday with the chief. We're a gift horse, and I guess we expect to be, looked in the mouth. But we, I think, understand that colleges sometimes have erred on being a bit arrogant, being a bit accusatory. We're not interested in doing any of that. Right? So, I don't know, can you be a gift horse and also be on your high horse? I'm not sure. But we don't want to do either of those things. We would like to be cooperative with you. Let me sort of end there, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes?
There's no liberal agenda or nothing with this whole...
We have no agenda. We're here of service. Absolutely. We're here to be of service. At the same time, we're cognizant of the issues that were raised in Executive Order 203, which requires that the reforms be sensitive to racial issues, right? That was, I think, the basis of 203. But at the same time, you know, the idea of supporting the police as well as improving.
And so we're doing reform with the police, are you hit the other side for the criminals?
I'm sorry,
That's
the
not
other side
their
for the
scope.
criminals?
The reform, we're talking about reform with the police.
Yeah, if you'd like us to address those issues, we'd be happy to do that.
So maybe these, you know, the laws need to be more stringent, and I know you deal with HIPAA laws with mental illness, I mean, I think we all have mental illness in one way or another.
Well, no.
No, I mean.
I'm sorry, I don't. Okay, go ahead, yeah, go ahead, I'm
You know what I
sorry.
mean?
No, I don't.
I mean, how does a police officer know, you know, someone's got mental illness when they approach him?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying, yeah, okay.
You know, I mean, he's not gonna say, do you take your pill today? No, I mean, he's not gonna do that. I mean, I just,
Well, that's-
how
I
do you
think-
do with HIPAA, mental illness, and everything else, you know, when the police officer has to do his duty, and now he's gotta deal with mental illness, he's not even sure, you're gonna make them social workers? I mean, that's what I'm trying to, I'm very confused on that whole thing. I mean, someone's got a mental illness, how does a police officer, I mean, you can figure it out if something's not right, but if I seen Jack get upset one time, and I could have swore he had a mental illness, but he was upset, but he's not, you know, he's fine, you know, so that's what I'm saying. I just don't, I don't know, maybe we just need to talk on the phone, how about that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
No.
Well, no, and that's, oh, no, and that is the purpose of bringing this guest in, and I
Yeah.
just, so I wanted to just structure
I'll give
something
you
as
my
we move
card.
around the room, because I will chair the discussion, so it's not just,
I'm sorry, yeah, please.
no, that's fine. You brought up a good point. Can the surveys address different types of questions? And that's actually one of the things, you know, that our guest is addressing. I think it would be really a good idea for you to structure all the concerns you have and see if some of that can be folded into these surveys, because one of the things that is being attempted here is to make sure the surveys do cover all of the bases that should be covered when this information is provided and used in a survey such as a Zogby poll. So let's you know, keep track of that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just calling in. One thing to keep in mind, right? The council has ultimate approval over this document. So, you know, I look at the colleges kind of like they're trying to bring counties together, find common issues. Part of what they're doing is outside the scope of what the reform committee is doing. So if you want to make suggestions to the state or something like that, as a unified county,
Right.
that's part of what they're trying to coordinate, right? What we're trying to look at, as Councilman Moody said, is what can the UPD do to be in compliance with the executive order and to be a better police department? Ultimately, when that's done, the committee has to hand it over to the Common Council. And then you guys have purview over that document. So this isn't a situation where you're left out. You might feel left out in the beginning as there's a plan to work from, but it's gonna require the Common Council to weigh
Wouldn't that
in.
be a conflict of interest with Delvin being on that board, he's a council person who's been voting for?
Well, it depends on how you look at it,
Well, I'm
because,
saying, you're gonna put him in a situation, he might not agree with a lot of things, now he's gonna vote for it, you're gonna put him in a conflict of interest.
well, that's the question that I was going to answer. If we didn't have council representation, because we spoke about this, if we did not have council representation on the reform committee, right, then there's nobody that's on the council that was a part of the process, and there's no ambassador to bring potential concerns, potential obstacles, and to communicate between the council and the committee to be there. So that would be more like shutting the council out of the process. So we decided to err on the side of inclusion.
I wasn't selected,
Huh?
I'm just saying.
All right, so regardless of the
Well,
selection.
I'll tell you why you weren't selected.
I'd rather keep it to the content of the guest.
Okay.
If we want to
All right.
get into the selection of how the committee
All right.
members, yeah. All right, so does anyone else from the floor have anything?
Yeah, I just-
Councilman
I'm
DeBrango.
going to address it to Councilman Moody, because you're on this committee. Is there any way that we can maybe link that site up to the City of Utica website? So when they do go on there, they can maybe link up to the site and answer some questions or whatever, find out what it's all about, so.
I think that'd be a great idea. Marcus can.
Well, we want to be careful, we can, but we want to be careful of doing it in a way that it doesn't conflate the two. We don't want people in the public, that was our initial concern, to conflate their effort with the efforts of the Utica Reform Committee. So as long as we're clear about that and how we display it, I think that that's a great idea.
But I think it's good the fact that they are gonna be having actual data and trying to get those.
That's what they're there for,
Yeah.
yeah.
And please, as we go around the room, remember, part of what was asked here is if we have any alternate things we'd like to add to these surveys.
Right.
To make them more inclusive, please, let's make sure we.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to people later on about this, absolutely. Yeah,
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
my pleasure. My
Thank you.
pleasure.
I think the scholarly thing is really nice.
Does anyone have anything else from the floor? Okay, thank you very much.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.